Sue Gunsberger decided that, and I didn't know it at the time, but Sue Gunsberger had just been elected. So I was, and when you take over a seat at the commission, you have board seats to fill, and she decided that I would be the perfect person to bring forward an amendment to the Human Rights Ordinance to include sexual orientation. And of course, having a gay son, she was very gay friendly. And she was also a great lady. She happened to have a master's in social work herself. But she brought a really great ethic to the commission. So she appointed me to the Human Rights Board with the charge that I should we called it it was called a delegation request. In order to initiate an ordinance change, the legalities of it required that the board bring a delegation request to the commission, and that was my charge. So actually, as it turned out, as she's telling, this was Sue Gunsberger's idea, that Dean and Alan Terrell, independently, having no association with us and what we were doing there, had decided that that it was time to do it again. And it was extremely controversial in the community at the time, because the community having suffered such a loss only a couple of years before. And I hooked up with Alan and Dean, and we became the triumvirate, and we had I can't tell you, it was a huge campaign. It took, I want to say, from the summer of '94 till June 13, 1995, before it was actually enacted. And we approached it as I approached it as a community organizer, since that was what I had a master's degree in. And we were very careful to be completely inclusive of the community, to be sure that we had reached out multiple times to the different organizations in the community, as those organizations represented the community members. And we had a myriad, I have to say, a very rich, gay, nonpartisan community, thriving community in Broward in the 90s, despite the fact that I think the community center, the Pride Center, that used to be called the Gay and Lesbian Community Center, started in 1994. But there were just a lot of organizations. There was an organization called Women in Network. It had 450. At the time I was on the board, 450 members and over 2,000 circulation for its newsletter. There was the temple that I spoke of. There was the Metropolitan Community Church. There were a million. There was the Corral. There were a lot of organizations, and so we had community meetings, town hall meetings. We had them at the main library. We had them at the old GLCC on Oakland Park Boulevard, and it took. And we were very careful that everybody was included, everybody was on board with it. I mean, of course, everybody wasn't on board with it, but in general, everybody signed off on it. And then we also had to lobby the county commissioners, and that was really something. And that was primarily, Alan Terrell had worked for the county, so he really understood how to do it from the legislative point of view. But the actual boots on the ground with the lobbying was primarily me and Dean. We met with the commissioners not just once, but multiple times, and in particular, Suzanne Gunsberger and Lori Parrish were very friendly with us. I mean, I would have to say that we conspired, and I conspired with Lori Parrish to enable this, the Human Rights Ordinance, to be amended to include sexual orientation protection. Hamilton Foreman was a crazy old guy who was rich as King Midas, and he was a Democrat, but he was a fundamentalist Christian. And he had opposed gay rights the last time around in the early 90s when BUAD was whatever they were doing in those days. I'm really not. But he had opposed it, and if Ham Foreman is against something, it wasn't going to happen. Lori Parrish told me, she said, if Ham tells me not to vote for this amendment to the ordinance, I won't do it because he will take me down. And he will take us all down, and we all know it. So you have to neutralize him. So I brought the issue of what we were going to do about Hamilton Foreman to the meeting at the Metropolitan Community Church. And there were about 10 people in the room, and 2 women. Of course, I was one. And I was brand new, relatively new in town, and a new face at the table. And so there was a discussion about, well, who was going to do this. And so I told them the plan was that I was going to meet with Lori Parrish and Jim Kane and Ham Foreman at the county commission. And there were a couple of very vocal opponents to my being the one to do that. And Jim Kane and Alan Curtis thought that it was very important that I do it because I was non-threatening, that they thought a woman would be much less threatening to a Christian fundamentalist that thought gays were animals. That I didn't look like someone that would. I wasn't going to evoke the imagery in his mind that a guy would. And they also also just the approach. A woman's approach is a little different than a man-on-man approach. So the day of the meeting, a couple of the guys from our steering committee were in the building and calling Lori Parrish frantically, saying she can't meet with Ham Foreman by herself. Lori said she's going to meet with him by herself, and if you come up here, I'm going to have you removed. So, long story short, I met with Ham Foreman for 2 hours. I had to sit there and listen to his rantings about gay people and his experience with the mafia. Somehow he equated, I don't know, it made absolutely no sense that his making a deal, what he finally decided, what reconciled him to agreeing to not take a position against the amendment of the Human Rights Ordinance to protect gays and lesbians, was that he was going to make a deal with me, and that I was going to promise in the future that he could call in his chips whenever, and that I would throw my gay and lesbian weight behind his issues. And at the end of 2 hours, he stood up and we shook hands. We shook hands 4 times. He was just so pleased with himself, so tickled. And, I just had to say, I just sat there and smiled and said, and shrugged my shoulders and, said nothing to all of his outrageous, things that he said. He was crazy. He was really crazy, but he was amazingly effective. The amendment of the Human Rights Ordinance was a huge thing. Yes, we had a rich and vibrant gay community, but on Wilton Drive was just a lower middle class wasteland. There was Chardays with the entrance in the back, in the parking lot. From the front, there weren't any windows. There was a lesbian bar, and I know there were a few gay men's bars, but they were all very low profile, and it was just a trashy environment. And if you had no protections, I think our right of association, they could come into a gay bar at any time and bust us. We just had no protections. It was bad. So this was a big thing that we were proposing to do, and we had just been defeated. So it was really remarkable, and it was a wonderful undertaking. And by the time we got to the second hearing at the Broward County Commission on June 13th, I believe there were 300 seats in the room, and the overflow filled up the hall outside. 200 of the 300 people in the room, we believe, were our supporters, because we were handing out, we had rolls of pink stickers that said, vote yes, so that when the commissioners looked out in the audience, they could see who the supporters were. There were 5 hours of testimony. It was really amazing. 1 out of 3 of the people that spoke were against us, and it was just horrible to hear the kinds of things that they said. And it was, we knew that we had the votes and we had it in the bag, but nonetheless, when they finally voted, it was unbelievable. I mean, we were, of course, standing up and cheering and crying. I mean, I could almost cry thinking about it. When I was reading my materials and my scrapbooks the other day, I teared up. I'm like, oh my God, was so well written. It's like I feel like I was just left. But anyway, it was really a wonderful thing. It was fabulous. And I also have dozens of letters, because Sue Gunsberger sent me stuff, of the letters that she got both before the vote was taken and after. Getting the Broward County Human Rights Ordinance amended made an amazing difference to people, even if it didn't touch their actual lives. Just the idea that it was there. But teachers, people who work for the county, they came out. They were all coming out, and then they had GLSEN, the Gay and Lesbian Straight Educators Network, became very big, and it was just amazing. It was an amazing time.